You know, of course, that since this story broke, you've been called a lot of things.
Yeah.
One of which is a transphobe.
Yeah.
Some people have accused you of using the free speech issue to mask what's really going on here, which is an attempt to deprive other people of what they believe are their legitimate rights.
Here's what's happened with Bill C-16 and the surrounding legislation. Free speech is the mechanism by which we keep our society functioning. Woo! It's as a consequence of free speech and the ability to speak that people can put their finger on problems, articulate what those problems are, solve them, and come to a consensus. I studied totalitarianism for 4 decades, and I know how it starts. It starts with restrictions on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't need them.
Yeah.
And Nicholas, this is where I want to bring you into the discussion because you teach this. You teach trans studies. If you would, give us a brief primer on so many gender identities that, in your view, require non-traditional pronouns.
Basically, it's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. And I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want, but in the interest of time, I won't. So that's a very popular misconception. Basically, the very popular idea and assumption that most people probably have, and definitely that our structures convey, that there is such a thing as male and female, that they connect to being a girl or a boy or a man or a woman. And then sometimes that will also recognize intersex or trans people or transsexual people, as you mentioned, because sometimes also referred to as a gender binary. So anything that fits within a gender binary can work within cisnormativity.
Okay.
But cisnormativity is basically that everyone assumes that there is male and female, and so very little is actually looked at.
Well, I don't understand what the claim that there's no such thing as biological sex means. And I certainly think it's, let's call it an error, to suggest that there's some sort of scientific consensus about that. I mean, there's biological differences between males and females in animals and human beings at every level of analysis.
I don't agree with why Dr. Peterson has been asked to stop abusing students on campus.
To stop doing what?
Abusing students.
I see.
And other members of our learning community who do deserve respect and do deserve to be able to work and learn and contribute to society in a place where if they are physically assaulted, if they are...
The assault so far came from the social justice warriors who were at this free speech rally, and almost 2 million people have watched those so far.
This is not accurate.
Well, you can look at the videos yourself.
Smile on it, bitch. What you want?
I said I was wondering if I could get your opinion.
No, we're good. Thank you.
Fuck you, that's my opinion.
We're good.
You've accused him of abusing students by not using the pronouns they want to be addressed by.
That's how I see it, absolutely.
That is tantamount to abuse in your view.
Absolutely. Many, many global documents, many
How about
organizations.
violence? Is it tantamount to violence?
Yes,
How about
absolutely.
hate speech? Is it tantamount to hate speech?
Yes, of course. It's hate speech
Fine,
to tell
that's-
someone that you won't refer to them as in a way that they that recognizes their humanity and dignity.
Why, in your view, do you think the trans community needs this kind of legislative protection?
Well, thank you. That's basically the point that hasn't been raised yet, which is that people are actually suffering huge lack of access to resources that will allow people to survive. So people are being physically assaulted. People do not have counselors that they can go to who are not going to, as Dr. Peterson has done on YouTube, recommend that they actually become more anxious and more upset about situations. People are being assaulted. I brought all sorts of really depressing stats that people who are leaning towards thinking that this is not that big of a deal. Those people need to look at those stats. But
Give us
many
one.
people...
Give us one stat.
Yeah, so 58% of students could not get academic transcripts with their correct name or pronoun. That causes a huge chain of events for students or anybody who's had any kind of academic training. As everyone recognizes, we need to be able to have references, we need to be able to have resumes, we need to be able to get jobs.
So I want to be sure that I'm clearly understanding your point here, which is, and therefore they feel disrespected, and therefore this affects their life in a very real way?
The feeling of disrespect is not as important as the ways that people in authority are able to circumvent the possibilities for living. So it has more to do with not being able to find housing and therefore being homeless, not being able to get jobs because people are discriminated against. We shouldn't be talking about free speech. What we should be talking about are the social issues facing people who are being discriminated against and what that looks like on campus, which is that some professors refuse to offer basic dignity to students and colleagues. That leads to people missing classes, it leads to people dropping out, it leads to a lack of positive opportunity for society to actually benefit from the contributions of many, many people, and 100% of people will benefit from more open discussion. And one of the problems is that it's being addressed in a black and white way. So it's too bad that we can't actually have an open conversation.
But also,
We invited another guest to be on the program today, and this person initially said yes, and then sent a Facebook message saying, you know what, changed my mind. Giving Jordan Peterson this, which are based in bigotry and misinformation, minimize his views. The humanity and rights of transgender, non-binary, and intersex people are not a matter of debate, and holding a debate which places a false equivalency between the views expressed by Peterson and the human rights concerns of the trans community would be an act of transphobia. Therefore, none of us wish to participate in this. Do we have two different groups here that are trying to make two different points and they find themselves in the same bowl of soup, and that's why this has turned into the conflagration it has?
We need more than one value, first of all, if we're going to survive as a society, because you can't solve every problem with the same approach. But there are more insidious things, in my estimation, going on underneath. I believe quite firmly that if we continue on our present path at the universities for 5 more years, that's a discussion we will not actually be able to have on campuses.
Because it will be...
By fiat, I mean, the legislation already implicitly presumes that biological sex, gender identity, and gender expression, which we haven't even talked about yet, vary independently. That is simply not true.
My identity, my personal identity, my gender identity is very separate from my political identity. And so it's very strange to have this to be where we're going to plant the flag and say, enough with this crazy political correctness. You don't get to choose your pronouns.
I thought
it seems trivial to me.
I thought it was an axiom, say, of feminism, for example, that the personal was political.
The personal is political. That was a rallying cry for a lot of feminists in the 1970s and 1960s. Many second-wave feminists use that phrase and its underlying message in their writing, speeches, consciousness raising, and other activities. We should be looking at the political issues all across the spectrum of issues themselves. It's really the basis of human security as a development priority.
And isn't that that's a famous phrase, the personal is political.
Okay,
The
but
personal is political when someone is attacking you on a basis that is personal and that you can't change about yourself. That is political. That's when people sometimes become politicized, is when they realize that no matter what they do in the world, there will be people who will continue to attack them on racist grounds, on gender and sexual violence grounds, and that's why people start to fight back, and that's why people object.
And your attempts to regulate my language use, and
I don't care about your language use. I care about the safety of the people who are being harmed.
I know people who make your kinds of arguments are always concerned with other people's safety.
I'm concerned with my own safety. Just so that people are aware, my physical, emotional life and livelihood is at risk from being here. And that's not true of everyone.
In comparison to mine, say.
I don't know about yours because
Yes,
I don't
you do.
live
You know
your life.
perfectly well about mine.
I do
You
know that you have
about the
tenure
letter.
and that's one of the major ways that you're able to do this. Trans and gender diverse communities, and especially people of color, are being targeted and threatened physically. So free speech is a great idea and equality is a great idea, but we actually can't have those conversations when people are not even able to be present.
Jordan, let me read this tweet to you. Can someone please explain to Jordan B. Peterson that there's a difference between freedom of speech and freedom from consequence?
Well, certainly there's a difference.
And are you prepared to suffer the consequences that society may deem you need to suffer because of your views?
Yes, I'm prepared to do that.
What does that entail?
Are you open to learning?
Well, hang
That's
on.
not the question.
Hang on, that wasn't the question.
It's
That's
true.
right.
Well, so what am I willing to do? Well, I think that the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal is probably obligated by their own tangled web to bring me in front of it. If they find me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this. And that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues.
Peterson! 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 Peterson!